Well, we are in the midst of Hezekiah and his difficulties, and as we start this morning, I just wanted to bring you some more stuff to try to help you grasp the whole situation that he faces as he is holed up in Jerusalem, if you will, with the gates barred and closed. The spring of Gihon has been buried, if you will, encircled with a wall and enclosed to try to keep the water away from the enemy, and it's been channeled into the city so that they can stay alive. But I wanted you to understand, as this Rabshakeh, this commander, is standing outside of the city and shouting and proclaiming these things, somehow get a grasp of just how frightening of an experience that is. And I wanted to try to share just a little bit of more stuff about this nation Assyria, and they're extremely modern in a sense, while the weapons are antiquated in our sense, with the tactics and the things that they use are still extremely effective and truly frightening, and I'm going to try to just give you a glimpse of that this morning. So I guess first of all, we pop up our usual map so you can remember where we are. So here is our map of, turn it on, there we go. From Nineveh, they came all the way down. They're working their way down towards Egypt. The new king has taken over in the land, and there have been a lot of uprising. He has already been to the south before this, and he's gone after these folks down here in Babylon and put down a couple of uprisings there rather ruthlessly. And now he has turned his direction westward to the coast and down this way, dealing with heading for Egypt and just cleaning house as he goes. So a little closer focus brings us down to the city of Lachish, which he is besieging at the time that we're looking at, and they send the contingent up to Jerusalem, kind of the early warning that we're coming your way next. And so that's what's taking place, and I wanted to help you grasp a little bit of their warfare techniques. If you pop up the next little picture there, here's an artist drawing of their some of their technology, and I want you to get a little bit of grasp of it. Their technology was some of the most advanced that there was, because it was a huge, wealthy nation, and they could afford this stuff. This is a siege tower right here, with a battering ram attached to it. You can see it taking a chunk out of the wall there. It's on wheels, so it's movable. It is covered with wicker and with cow hides to put out, to extinguish any flame. People will be shooting flaming arrows at it, trying to set it on fire. But this dense wicker and animal hides would prevent them from getting through. You also must have the wicker shield here. They have a shield bearer and the guy with the bow attacking the guy at the city with his bow. Notice these helmets, funny little peaked helmets. You think all these ancient ones, the Egyptians have a similar looking helmet. That's kind of a goofy looking thing. Is it supposed to make you look cool or what? That's specifically designed to deflect a sword or an axe. Somebody tries to chop down on your head, it glances off rather than penetrating. So those pointy helmets were for a purpose. It actually served a function. The next slide we have is a little bit hard to see, but it's actually this is from Nineveh, from the siege of Lachish, in that room that we talked about that was there. And there's a reason, as I was doing some research on this, of why they had these things on the walls in Nineveh in their palace. And it's the beginnings of the process of psychological warfare. And what they do is anybody that comes to visit, and it starts to make sense why they had this room with the siege of Lachish all in these panels all the way around it, because whenever you brought someone from another country in, you toured them through your museum, and they got to see what happened at the city of Lachish. And if you didn't get to see this fearsome machine right here, you got to see its picture. And you got to see how effective it is at breaking down walls and attacking the city. You also get to see some things that a little harder to see maybe on this one. Let's go ahead and pop up the next one. Here's another, a little dark, So again, here is the city right here, and here is the siege tower, and this guy with this bow, which the expert tells us is a composite bow. It's something that has the ability to sling an arrow much harder and much faster than the simple one-piece bows that the Jerusalem would have had, or Lachish. Their bows would have been much more powerful. And there's additional psychological warfare going on in this panel that lets you know that if you get encircled by this nation, it will not be pleasant. And you will notice that right up here, some funny looking things, hard to see what they are. Those are human bodies impaled on spikes outside of the city. And you would let them know, they said in the reading that I did, one of the best things that could happen to you as a captive would be to be beheaded, because it was sudden and swift. Down here you have torture of the victims, the poor victims. They have one other one where they are skinning them alive outside the city, so you can see what's happening to those they've taken captive as a message to those inside of what could happen to you. And they want to use that, they want to portray that image of being fearsome. Over here is a ladder, they're scaling the walls with a ladder. You can see the guys with their smaller shields and people praying for hope up here on the city walls. Also this shield right here is one of those wicker shields, again with the protection over the top. You know, so one guy's holding it here, and a guy with his composite bow here. Here's another wicker shield here as they protect themselves from the arrows that are coming in. High-tech stuff. Yes?
Well, they showed these terrible things they were doing to people, and then they told them to give up.
They hope that they'll give up, and they go to the city and surround it. And if you saw this in the Capitol when you were getting the tour, it's a little heads up that maybe you do what the king asks you to do. Don't try to rebel.
I think all those torture things would be a little counterproductive.
Actually, it put a lot of fear in cities when they showed up, and the incentive was surrender now. And remember, the message that he read off to them is, if you surrender now, I'll take you to a place that flows with grapes and bread, and you'll be way better off to surrender and follow us, pay the taxes, whatever it is, give up, follow us. This will be your choice if you go the other way, if you try to hold up. The folks in Jerusalem were facing this right here. That was what they were threatening to send. You either shape up or you're next. And this is what will happen to you. These are actually images that were, if you will, photographs taken at the Battle of Lachish. And remember, I think the next slide shows what we've seen. This is the one we've seen before. This right here is the tell at Lachish. This corner, this is the siege ramp right here. And you built that siege ramp, and that battering ram that we just looked at would have been pushed up this ramp to get higher on the wall, because the wall is weaker towards the top. So rather than try to beat it where it's feet thick at the bottom, you build that ramp up the side, and it wasn't necessarily just so you get up scale over the wall, it was get up and get that siege ramp rolled up close enough to it that you can beat the top of the wall in where it's weaker. And also where you can get a good shot at the archers that are on the wall and that sort of thing. The next shot, I think, is the one we've seen before with the whole tell of the city of Lachish, and here's that siege ramp right here. Would have been built up on that corner of the wall. And so that's how you got up there, and one of the ways you would try to breach that wall. Some additional things from the dig at Lachish that gives you demonstration of what they would do. These are arrowheads recovered at that site, and those would have been fired on the city. There's our Assyrian arrowheads. These are sling balls. For the guys with the slings, like David, those are the stones, the shot, if you will, that would have been thrown. Those are pretty good sized little pebbles. I would not want to get hit by one of those. I don't know why in my mind you think it's something else. These are stones with holes bored in them. These were defensive weapons used by the folks inside the wall, and you hang those from a rope and swing them down and try to knock down the ladders and things like that might be put up the wall against you. And so you would take these things and swing them off over the edge of the wall and try to knock things off to keep them from coming up the wall. One of the other deals I didn't see actually showed where they had some kind of chains they've made, and they try to go down and encircle the battering ram and lift it, flip it up, and try to make it unable to penetrate the wall by pulling their battering ram up out of the way. So, fearsome battle, nasty stuff if you did not survive, and that was the threat to Jerusalem. When they came up and Hezekiah are reading this letter out to them, that's what's behind them. And that's why you go, oh, what's the big deal? You're all holed up, you're safe inside your wall, you're okay. Not necessarily. Assyria was famous, world famous. They were a huge power, and this is what they did to everybody they ran up against that didn't go their way. They made examples, and they were masters with the psychological warfare, and that's what we're reading about as we read these letters from these guys. So I'm going to pick it up today in Isaiah 37, where we left off last time, in verse 8. And we may duck back to Kings and Chronicles, but they're really extremely close parallel passages on this particular event. So we'll take it from Isaiah's recording of it. So we've got Rabshakeh on his second trip back to the city of Jerusalem. He was there, made an announcement with the bullhorn to folks on the wall, left to go back and find the Lachish had fallen, and they moved on to the next town. And so Rabshakeh's returning here in verse 8, and so we'll pick it up there. It says, he returned and found the king of Assyria fighting against Libnah, for he had heard that the king had left Lachish. When he heard them say concerning Tirhakah, king of Cush, or Ethiopia, remember we looked at his bust last time, I didn't think to throw him back in this time. He has come out to fight against you. And when he heard it, he sent messengers to Hezekiah, saying, thus you shall say to Hezekiah, king of Judah, do not let your God in whom you trust deceive you, saying, Jerusalem shall not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Don't believe it. Behold, you have heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all the lands, destroying them completely. So will you be spared? What we were just looking at, that kind of stuff. You've heard about us, and they had. They made sure that everybody heard about all that stuff. All the torture, all the awful things that would happen, all the men being put to the sword. In fact, they have recorded stuff that, and they do stuff that stands your hair on end. Burning people alive, all kinds of things. So, they were nasty folks. So, did the gods of those nations which my fathers destroyed deliver them? Even Gozan, Haran, Rizpah, and the sons of Eden who were in Telassar, did their gods do any good? No, they didn't. Where is the king of Hamath, the king of Arpad, the king of the city of Sepharvaim, or whatever, Hena and Ivah? So we got this letter. Where are they? We're coming. You know what we do. I don't even have to tell you how bad it's going to be. And here's Hezekiah's response. I could see his hands shaking as he takes this letter. I don't know about you, but this is scary stuff. This is not only death, but looking you in the face, but torture as well. Then Hezekiah took the letter from the hand of the messengers and read it. And he went up to the house of the Lord and spread it out before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed to the Lord, saying, O Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, who art enthroned above the cherubim, thou art the God, thou alone, of all the kingdoms of the earth, thou hast made heaven and earth. Incline thine ear, O Lord, and hear. Open thine eyes, O Lord, and see, and listen to all the words of Sennacherib, who sent to reproach the living God. Truly, O Lord, the kings of Assyria have devastated all the countries in their lands, and have cast their gods into the fire, for they were not gods, but the work of men's hands, wood and stone. So they have destroyed them. And now, O Lord, our God, deliver us from his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that thou alone, Lord, art God. And Isaiah the son of Amoz sent word to Hezekiah, saying, Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, because you have prayed to me about Sennacherib, king of Assyria, This is the word that the Lord has spoken against him. So here it is. This is the message that goes back to Sennacherib. It gets sent back, I assume, by messengers or something. And it's really an interesting description. Here it is. She has despised and mocked you, the virgin daughter of Zion. She has shaken her head behind you, the daughter of Jerusalem, whom have you reproached and blasphemed? And against whom have you raised your voice and haughtily lifted up your eyes against the Holy One of Israel? So the first part, did you get the first little word picture there? The virgin daughter of Israel. It's written like a potential victim of rape who has been victorious or has not been attacked by her attendant assailant. And she has, as he has turned to go, she has shaken her head and gone, to you. In other words, you're nobody, you're nothing, you can't touch me, is this daughter of Israel. Said, you've shaken her head behind you as you're leaving. So though your servants, in verse 24, have reproached the Lord, and you have said, this is what he kind of sums up their message, with many chariots I came up to the heights of the mountains, to the remotest parts of Lebanon, and I cut down its tall cedars and its choice cypresses, and I will go to its highest peak and its thickest forest. I dug wells and drank waters. With the sole of my feet I dried up all the rivers of Egypt. What he just relayed for you is that he has swept through that whole coast of Mediterranean, from the cedars of Lebanon all the way down to the rivers of Egypt. And the king of Assyria is saying, I conquered them all. I took those hills, I cut the trees, I took what I wanted, I dug springs where I wanted. And it's using that as a picture of destroying the people and taking them captive. That he even went into Egypt. And he says, I dried them all up. In other words, I conquered everybody in Egypt. And then he says, yeah, you did that. Have you not heard? Long ago I did it. From ancient times I planned it. And now I have brought it to pass that you should turn fortified cities into ruinous heaps. Therefore their inhabitants were short of strength. They were dismayed and put to shame. They were as the vegetation of the field and as green herb, as grass on the housetops is scorched before it is grown up. So I planned that, and you did it because I planned it. And I know you're sitting down, and I know you're going out and you're coming in, and you're raging against me. Because of your raging against me, and because your arrogance has come up to my ears, therefore I will put my hook in your nose and my bridle in your lips, and I will turn you back by the way which you came. Ooh. He says, I'm not messing around. You, the great king of Assyria, are going to put a hook in your nose like a bull. I'm going to lead it. It's also a symbol. There's an actual picture of the king of Assyria leading these other nations with a ring in the nose of their kings, things like that. So a little bit of both of that. I'm going to grab you by the nose, and I'm going to take you right back. And he says, then, Hezekiah, this is a sign for you. You shall eat this year what grows of itself, in the second year what springs from the same, and in the third year sow, reap, plant vineyards, and eat their fruit. And the surviving remnant of the house of Judah shall again take root downward and bear fruit upward. For out of Jerusalem shall go forth a remnant, and out of Mount Zion survivors. The zeal of the Lord of hosts shall perform this. Thus says the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come to this city, or shoot an arrow there. Nothing. Neither shall he come before it with a shield, nor throw up a mound against it. All the things we were just looking at. By the way that he came, by the same he shall return, and he shall not come to this city, declares the Lord. For I will defend this city to save it for my own sake, and my servant David's sake. And then he does. So, boy, you catch it. He said the promise to Hezekiah is you're not going to starve, but you're going to live off whatever volunteers in the land, because it's been swept through by the enemy. They're all hiding in the city, so you can't farm, you can't plant crops. So I'm going to take care of you by the volunteers that grow this year. And next year again, because you can't plant because you've been locked up, so you're going to have to survive one more year. If you're a winter wheat farmer and you planted the year before, you don't have a crop the next. But he says the next year, you'll be back into production again. And this guy's going away. And then God's solution in verse 36. It says, the angel of the Lord went out and struck 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. And when men arose early in the morning, behold, all of them were dead bodies. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed and returned home and lived at Nineveh. And it came about as he was worshipping in the house of Nishroth, his god, that Adremelech and Sharezer, I'm sure I slaughtered those two, his sons killed him with a sword, and they escaped into the land of Ararat, and Esarhaddon, his son, became king in his place. And we can go historically and find evidence to back this up, though it's not really, there's no place that says, wow, we woke up and all these guys were dead. That just does not look good. Posted on the walls of the palace of Nineveh, none of your enemies are going to be shaking in fear because you lost 185,000 of your soldiers in one night. So you don't put that out there. What's really interesting, you always brag up all the things you've done, and we have seen the little stone deal with all the bragamony on it before. And the interesting one is the city of Jerusalem that is mentioned. And he says, I pinned up Hezekiah like a bird in a cage, in Jerusalem, like a bird in a cage. And that's as close as he got. That's all he could brag about because he never took the city. So it's recorded there. An interesting thing is recorded in records in Egypt of this king's attack down. And according to their version of it, they prayed to their god, the sun god, and he sent field mice that ate all the bowstrings of the Syrians, and they woke up in the morning with all their weapons destroyed and bugged out. That's their version. There is one other version I ran into, and if you pop up the second map there, Kathy, with the little closer in one, on this, there's a version of it that has King Terhaka, however you want to pronounce him, of Ethiopia, coming up and coming around and coming in from the east and catching, either here or somewhere, catching these guys by surprise and attacking them at night and killing 185,000 of them. Well, if you can't explain any other thing, getting a king from Egypt to come up and attack fits as good as any, and it fits some of the warnings that we see. And you try, well, what were all their warnings? Don't you lean on Egypt, they can't help you, they'll pierce your hand on that. So there is, if you read some historical speculation, there's some that believe the thing that turned them around was a nighttime raid by the Ethiopians that the Syrians didn't expect, and somehow got them in the back door. But it still comes down to the same conclusion. They packed up and left. And there is the record of this guy being murdered by his sons several years later. And this guy that took over being king in his place is recorded, and we got little carvings of him just like we had up here. So this really happened. There's historical evidence for this event. There just, nobody else explains how it happened.
If it had been such a battle, you think we would have witnesses.
Somebody in Egypt would have gone, wow, we beat the pants off of them there at Libnah. When we caught them standing still and we sent them packing back home. Yeah, somebody would have bragged about it. But all you have is these little tidbit things, and I could not find it. I found one reference to some recording on a wall somewhere in Egypt of this mouse event, and they even had a little mouse, and you worshiped the little mouse that saved you. Sort of thing. And I couldn't find it anywhere. I just saw this one reference to it, and so I thought, man, I'd love to see that, and I couldn't find that. I'm so sorry. So amazing.
By making up stories, they can grab a little glory themselves without putting out any effort.
Yeah, the best story is really, it saves you a lot of pain
It's
elsewhere.
almost like TV special report.
Yeah, you got this little special news blurb.
Yeah.
Mice destroy Egyptians. Probably played really well down by the grocery store in your little magazine that came in. I can see a little mouse chewing on the front cover. Yeah. So, yeah.
CNN would be
Yeah, it'll be that little trailer thing that goes across the bottom of your screen. Egyptians victorious, or Egyptian mice is victorious. I don't know. Crazy stuff.
Imagine the mice.
Yeah.
So, all that too.
Yeah, all the chewing and everything. Yeah. It's just, that one's just, wow, I wonder where that came from. I guess you're grasping at straws to explain why this mighty, fearsome, unstoppable military turned around and left. Just went home. Could not, surely, but surely it's not God. So what? Do you notice there's two things that we'll see in here. And the first one you got to really notice is when, you saw Hezekiah the first time tried to pay his fine. I'll just pay the fine, I'll take care of it, give them the money, and they'll go away, and we'll be escape. And that went. By then the king was ticked enough. He said, I didn't come all this way to just collect a little money and be done. I'm through with rebellion, I'm through with this. We're cleaning house, and we're going all the way to Egypt. That's it. So he took the money, sure, I'll take that now. Surrendered. So that didn't work. So when the pressure really comes on, what does Hezekiah suddenly fall back to? It's God. And what is it about God that he falls back on? Does he go through his scrolls and look for a promise of, if there's this terrible battle and all this sort of thing, you go through this process and then God will deliver you, or, thumb through it. Okay, let's see. Embattled by king of Assyria. Let's see, what's the right response? What will God do in that? Oh, gee whiz, that page isn't in there. There's no specific prophecies or anything other than Israel's going to be defeated by Assyria. Isaiah said that. Hosea said that. Where is the one that says, if they come to Jerusalem, you're safe, so don't worry about it? It's not there, is it? So what does he fall back on when he takes that paper in with trembling hands, and that scroll, the hide, whatever it's written on, parchment, takes that thing in and spreads that thing out. And he says, here it is, God. What is it that gives him any confidence that he's going to have any success against them? It's Solomon's dedication of the temple. That if this happens, Lord, see us, remember us, and turn our hearts back to you. And when his heart turns back, did you notice what he says? Let's go back to that. Verse 17, we'll pick it up there. Well, let's go to 16 when he starts. It really starts there. First of all, he says, O Lord of hosts. And we know that's a churchy word. So when he says Lord of hosts, you just go, oh yeah, okay, that's who he is. What does that mean? What's the host? That's the person that greets you when you come to the door party, right?
That's all the powers of heaven.
That's all the powers. It's the armies. The hosts of heaven are the armies of God. So he says, you're facing this mighty army out there. He goes to the one who is the God of armies, who has armies at his disposal. And he is also the God of Israel, which recalls what? Why would he say that? Well, it's our God. That's just all it is to it. He's the God of Israel. What does that mean to Hezekiah? He's the guy we better worship because he's the one for our town, for our nation. He's the one with the promise. The reason he is the God of Israel is because he chose Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And we are the descendants. He takes not only to who God is and his God of armies and the power, but he is the one who has made the promise to us, which links you to Solomon's dedication prayer. Can't say it. It connects those together. Right there in those two things, he's saying, I know that you are this powerful God, and I know you've made a promise to our nation. And I'm clinging to those two things. It's what you have said. I also know that you are enthroned above the cherubim. He's the one next door whose Shekinah glory is in the temple between the cherubim. He's with us.
Mercy seat.
The mercy seat, yeah. He's with us, and it's the mercy seat, the place of grace. So it's the God who is powerful, the God who's made a promise, and the God who is there with us above the mercy seat. Thou art the God, thine alone. You are really the only God that exists of all those kingdoms on earth, and you are the Creator, the one who has made heaven and earth. That's all you really need to know when all hell strikes your palace, isn't it? You go back to what do you know, what has he revealed about himself. That's where you got to start. No matter what happens in life, you go back to his word and what he said, and what do we know about God, and how do we know we can trust him? Because he is the one who is all-powerful and has the armies. He is the one who has made the promise to Israel and the promises to the Gentiles, which is me. So the promise of mercy, the one who is enthroned above the cherubim, between the cherubim, who sits at the right hand of God the Father, as we know through the revelation that we've been seeing in our other studies. So that's what he wants to rely on. And then he goes on and says, incline your ear, open thine eyes, listen to what this guy's saying. Here's my problem, Lord. First, it's who you are and why I'm coming here and why I should do it. And here's my problem. This turkey snack rib is coming on, and I love the way he recognizes the real issue. You notice what the real issue is? This guy's insulted us. He says, he has come down here and the insult is aimed at you. It's not about us. He recognized that attack that comes, it's not about us. The Apostle Paul, of all the great guys and all the wonderful things that he did and all that sort of thing, he had something in his life that he didn't like. Remember that? What do you call it? A thorn in the flesh. Boy, wouldn't you like to get rid of the thorn in the flesh? Do you know where he credited that thorn in the flesh from coming from, ultimately? He says, God's doing that, and he's doing it for one reason, to glorify himself, to keep me humble, so it's him and not me. The focus is always on him. And he recognized it wasn't about Apostle Paul, it's about God and his work going forward, and he does what he needs to do in order to be the God of the universe and recognized as such. And when you approach God that way, he answers through Isaiah. And he says, y'all going to just shake your head behind him as he turns tail and runs back to Assyria. And you won't be touched. The virgin daughter will not be touched. There won't be an arrow. There won't be a shield. There won't be a siege thing to knock your walls down. He's going home. And he does. Wouldn't it be nice that all our things go away? You got to hang around for the next chapter, because this is great celebration, I'm sure, in Jerusalem. Fantastic celebration. And I'm going to take you back real quickly as you prepare yourselves for next 2 Chronicles. And it tells us what happens to Hezekiah because of this. And we have the same thing happening and all this great stuff. Let's pick it up in verse 20 of 2 Chronicles 32. So the Lord saved Hezekiah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the hand of Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, and from all the hand of all others, and guided them on every side. And many were bringing gifts to the Lord at Jerusalem, and choice presents to Hezekiah, king of Judah, so that he was exalted in the sight of all nations thereafter. Oh man, he's a big guy in the community now. He survived, and everybody's bringing praises. And in those days Hezekiah became mortally ill, and he prayed to the Lord. And the Lord spoke to him and gave him a sign. But Hezekiah gave no return for the benefit he received, because his heart was proud. Therefore wrath came on him and on Judah and Jerusalem. Oh boy, does that sound like home? The yo-yo we go on. He had this great victory, and God gave him this great victory, and he was so tuned in to who God was, and he's doing so great. And the next thing you know, everybody's bringing him presents and telling him how wonderful it is, and he believed it. And God said, no, you missed it, Hezekiah, and that'll be our study next time, of how God turns him around again in grace and brings him back. Boy, that is me all over the place. Yay, wow, this is great, God. Aren't I wonderful? And he goes, no, you missed it. You missed it. Let's close. Father, we thank you for our time together this morning. And these ancient stories that you've recorded for us, and the fun that we can have with the internet and access to so many resources out there to find pictures and information of the archaeology that's been done over the years, and actually pull up the bits and pieces of these stories and see that these really were real people in real times. It sounds like a fairy tale often when we read it. But these were real battles that took place. Real people died. The atrocities that we read about, the psychological warfare, were real. The threats against Jerusalem and the fear of the people behind the walls were real. And the faith was also real. As they get pushed all the way down to the bottom, and they've got no place else within themselves, they begin, like Hezekiah, to remember who you are. Father, we pray we would learn that lesson and go there sooner than later. That would not require taking us to the very depths and hit bottom before we recognize that you are the God above all gods, and that you are the bestower of grace, that you are the one who has provided our salvation through our Savior, who died on the cross on our behalf. And Father, would you give us the faith in him and the faith in the words that you have spoken that reveal yourself and your Son to us, that we might have our trust in you and not in the world around us, not in our own strength or our own success, but that we would be able to be listening to you, directed by you, and living lives that glorify and point to you, that tell the world that there is the God that dwells between the cherubim over that mercy seat. Father, we thank you for our time together this morning. We just give you praise in his name.